Food is not the enemy. It's your perception of your self-worth. Let's talk about it. Hey, I'm Claudine. Welcome back to the channel. If you've been here for a bit, you know that I've pivoted to art, but I've always talked about health first and foremost, and that's what I want to talk about is how I healed my relationship with food. And if you don't know, I currently have a personal training business and I've been in the industry for 8 years now. I have a lot of struggles with food in the past, emotional eating, restrictive diets, binge eating, and they affected everything. But while you listen, if you want to hang out with me, print this out. You'll have this free coloring book in the description box. I created this piece of art and I think you'll have a fun time coloring it in and we'll just chat. In the past, I struggled a lot with healthy eating habits because I just grew up in a not very healthy home. I don't blame my parents or my grandparents for their eating habits because I know it's their past traumas as well that carried on with them. Oh no, I colored outside of the lines. I'm gonna start with this. And because I grew up not knowing that some family members had a food addiction, I thought that it was normal. I thought it was normal to stuff yourself until you felt pretty sick and then you just continued on with your day with a lot of self-loathing. And I realized growing up, it's not normal. You shouldn't feel bad about yourself all the time. We were just conditioned to feel that way as something that's normal. I've worked myself out of it and I'm continuing to work myself out of it because it is like a workout. It just doesn't completely disappear. That feeling of lower self-worth, you don't realize that it's tied to your eating habits, unhealthy eating habits until you really start digging. When I was around the formative years, my preteen years, every single night after school, we would walk home in the heat. That feeling of removing a sweaty backpack off your sweaty back? It felt so good. And because the day was full of stressors, you just wanted to have fun. So I would play and then I would raid the pantry and I would just eat all the snacks in sight until I felt really stuffed. One time I ate a family-sized bag of Doritos. I felt really crappy after. I just knew that I ate a lot and now I felt bad about eating it. I felt very guilty. So what did I do the next day? I tried not to eat as much and I tried to combat it with restricting myself earlier in the day, and then I would repeat the cycle again later that night with more overeating. As time went on, I went to college and I started thinking about my health a little bit more seriously. I started working out, going to the gym, but I thought I was really, really big. I thought I was so fat, but then looking back, I realized I wasn't big at all. I just had this distorted perception of myself with how I looked. I just thought that I just looked horrible, and every time I worked out, I would get feelings of confidence because I would get stronger, and that felt really good. It's something that was outside of food. Because I got stronger, it got me slightly addicted to the gym, and I just kept going. But I still didn't address my relationship with food. Because I started working out, naturally I'm spending more energy, so I have to eat a little bit more. I wanted to grow my muscle because I just thought I looked really flat. So I started eating more, and then with more eating came a little bit of weight gain. And it wasn't even bad weight gain, it was just weight gain. But because I was conditioned by society to believe that any type of weight gain is bad, I started freaking out. So I started that cycle again. I would restrict myself earlier in the day, and then because I would feel so restricted, I would go into the nighttime eating maybe not a family-sized bag of Doritos, but I would definitely eat 3 packets of ramen. Probably not the healthiest thing to do. In retrospect, everything makes so much more sense now as to why I started restricting earlier in the day and then I would binge later at night. And it's because I just viewed food as black and white. I viewed my actions as bad or good. I gave everything that I did with a moral compass, with the way that I ate. So it's not just me thinking, okay, I ate, And that nourished me. The way I thought about it was, I ate this. I must be so good. I ate no junk food. I'm such a good girl. But then I just feel so restricted later on in the day that I didn't know, but in hindsight, I realized that I was just breaking down my will throughout the day, and I was restricting so much that I just lost all will and control later at night, that I just tended to binge eat. That's actually researched behavior as to why people tend to binge eat after restrictive dieting. It's because we have a finite amount of willpower, and that willpower gets depleted throughout the day by doing things like restricting, going through very stressful situations, having very difficult conversations. So it's no surprise as to why I started overeating later at night. And it became this yo-yo cycle, and it kept viewing food as this is good and this is bad. But no, the plot thickens. I end up getting into the fitness industry, and I started, you guessed it, looking into diets a little bit more. So the more I looked into diets, the more I realized I have more knowledge. I can look into the science of how calories work. So I started learning how calories and macros worked, and then I realized, well, if this is the type of body that I want, this is how I should be eating in these exact proportions. Not knowing that I had already replaced an obsession, a food obsession, with a different type of obsession, which is counting calories. So I started counting calories. I again started thinking, I'm so good because I'm sticking within my calories and my macros. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And then if I wasn't doing so good, in my eyes, if I started steering away from the macros that I have given for myself, I started thinking, I'm doing bad, I'm doing bad, I'm doing bad. And I just kept putting so much guilt and shame on myself that eventually my willpower again got depleted. And guess what happened? I would binge eat later on. So it was the same cycle of restricting and binging, but it was just a different flavor because now I just knew how macros and calories worked. And it wasn't until a few years ago I realized that my health is so much bigger than the number on the scale. My health is so much bigger than how good I was with eating within my calories. Because at this point I had been serving clients for a while already, and I realized everyone has some sort of anxiety around food because they feel like they're not being good. A lot of it comes down to self-worth. We do a lot of things subconsciously. Sometimes we just do it without thinking of the repercussions. For example, I grew up with food as our love language. We didn't really give each other hugs or kisses, but in order to show someone that we care, we give them food. So when I'm feeling low and I want to feel better about myself, what do? I turn to food. When you've had a stressful day or you had a really difficult conversation, but you don't address what really happened, what do? You turn to food. One of the biggest turning points for me was I started getting stomach issues or gut issues, and I couldn't really pinpoint as to why I would get painful flare-ups in my stomach area, and I had it since I was around 13 or a little younger. And the more I researched into it, I realized I had SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And all the times leading up to this moment, I always thought that the flare-ups would occur because I was eating really spicy food, deep fried food. With more research and educating myself on what was going on in my stomach, in my gut, I had an overgrowth of bacteria, and the only way for me to get rid of it was through a round of medicine and by eating a very specific diet, very low in sugars and very low in carbs, because all the bacteria would feed on all the sugars and carbs. When I realized that I had to do that 6-week diet, my perspective around food completely changed. Oh my gosh, why was I cutting out nuts before? Why was I cutting out oils before? All these healthy fats, because I told myself they're too high in calories, they're too high in macros. And during that time of low carb eating, I really started to appreciate all the foods that I was cutting out before because I loved my carbs. Why did I cut them out? Because I was afraid of eating higher calories. I was afraid of thinking that I'm not being good and sticking to the food that I should be eating. I was just simply afraid that I wasn't being good enough. And I'm not gonna lie, it was a really, really hard diet. I couldn't even have onions or garlic. It was that bad. But being deprived of all the foods that I took for granted before, getting rid of the foods that I didn't eat as much because I thought they were too high in calories, I realized how much sustenance it provided for me during that time that I had to cut out so much food. There were points where I was just feeling so lightheaded because I couldn't have any carbs due to that restrictive diet for my stomach pain to go away, that I got very, very thankful for food. I thought to myself, if something's supposed to be good for me, why am I attaching so much meaning behind the calories? Why am I attaching so much meaning as to why I shouldn't eat this? Because I'm not being a good person. I'm not being a disciplined individual by eating avocados. Totally unrelated from my relationship with food. I continued on my personal development journey because I love personal development. I started looking at trained therapists, and the more work that I did on myself about my self-worth, just like how I mentioned earlier in this video, a lot of my self-worth was tied to the way I eat. And because of a culmination of all the years of me putting so many rules on myself about food, I realized that I put so much of my self-worth on how good I was with my diet and the way that I ate, that I was so blind to it. It started running my life without me knowing it. Sometimes recognizing that is the only step that you need. I started attaching my self-worth to how disciplined I was with food. It made me more aware with how I was approaching all my food. Anytime I was at home and I would eat something, I needed to make sure that I cleaned my plate. Because, we were all guilted into finishing our plate because it's a waste of food, which I understand. But also, one thing that my sister told me was, I just eat with the thought of, I want to try out more foods later on. And that was one big realization for me. I ate as if there was no more food left for me after that meal. Oh, I was operating from a place of scarcity. I was thinking that there was going to be not enough food for me, no other options, so I would just eat everything in sight. When in fact, there's so much excess of food around me, and I'm very privileged to say that. Once I started thinking that there's more food to come around, I want to try out different foods after this meal, it made me cut back on how much I was eating, because I would overeat without me thinking about it. It was just autopilot, and it was usually during the times of lower self-worth that I would overeat. After I started framing it that way, I naturally reduced the desire to want to overeat because I expanded my horizons. It was like shifting away from a scarcity mindset to an abundant mindset, that there is a lot of food to come around. Why am I overeating this? I don't need to overeat this. I want to try out different foods. Why stuff myself with this meal when I could have more options, more flavor options in the next meal? With those mindset shifts and a combination of that crazy diet that I went on, which I don't suggest people going on unless you have very specific medical advice to do it due to a health condition, which I had, I was able to slowly melt off all my unwanted and excess weight that affected my confidence in my life. Because again, I train clients for a living. I couldn't fully serve people by being in that position. That's why I made this piece of art, Food is Food, because I neutralize the way that I look at food. Food is just food. Food is not good. Food is not bad. I mean, yeah, it could taste good. It could taste delicious. And that's subjective, but it's fuel, it's sustenance. And once we neutralize the way that we look at food, we look at it in such a different light that it doesn't feel so heavy. It doesn't feel so heavy as, this bread is bad for me. So what can you do right now to be the healthier version of yourself? How can you move forward from that thought? A little bit of this bread will satisfy me. Maybe I'll make a sandwich out of it, or I'll make toast, and I'll feel really energized. And I want to try out different food later on. So I'll just need enough just to help me feel satisfied for my next meal. Whereas before, the way I would look at bread is, oh man, I don't know if I should eat that. Maybe just a little bit. I'm gonna feel so bad because there's just so many carbs in it. I'm wearing this dress. I'm just gonna look so fat in my back. I'm gonna get a big back from eating this bread. No, I'm not. Who's saying that? No one's saying that. I'm saying that to myself. Just recognizing that every thought we put inside our heads are not real. Our food fears specifically. Oh gosh, it's a really dark potato. I just heard this from social media, so I'm sorry if this is misinformation. But I would believe if this were a real experiment. But there was a study done in the 70s where they tested on women, on a group of women, that carbs were bad. Like, they put it in a magazine. And they made so many women believe that carbs are bad. And then there's this phenomenon that occurred that a lot of women started avoiding carbs because people started making up rules of they're fattening, And it caught on. Isn't that wild what the media could do? When something as neutral as food is food, something that nourishes us can be seen as something very bad. That is insanity. And also, I had to shift who I was looking at online. Am I looking at registered dietitians? Am I looking at people who have healthy mindsets around food and training? Or am I looking at people who only push products like weight loss pills because it makes them a quick buck? And you know that's not how they got their body. Am I looking at influencers that may be naturally gorgeous, but so different from me that I'm putting unnecessary pressure and insecurity on myself? So you get to choose. Who are you going to follow? Who's going to serve your highest good when it comes to a better mindset around food and your relationship with your body? The most unexpected benefit that I got from this whole journey is that every other area of my life feels better. I have more confidence because I know that it doesn't have to be so difficult to have a healthy fat loss journey. I don't have to yo-yo in my weight as I have done before in the past. And the confidence is just the biggest plus side because you don't realize how much confidence you've lost in a process that just breaks you down so much, like a yo-yo cycle of dieting. Like, you don't know how good it feels to get out of that until you're out. The confidence is unmatched because you start fully trusting yourself and your decisions. Before, I would just not have full trust in myself if I were to eat something. Like, I wouldn't know the outcome. I'd be afraid of feeling bad about myself. A decision is just a decision, and we can come out of it. We can always change the outcome later on. If we don't like what the outcome is after a certain decision is made, we can always make a different choice later on. It's the same thing with food. Maybe there are times now where I eat a little too much and I do it for a period of time, but then I don't need to freak out. I can look at it in a different light and say, okay, I've just been eating a little bit more. Do I feel good about it? Not really. What can I do moving forward? Let me adjust this. Let me listen to my hunger cues a little bit more. Let me see if I'm so stressed out before I reach for the pantry or the snack cabinet. What tiny things can I do moving forward that will help me feel healthier and more confident in myself? I mean, if I'm going to be real with you right now, I'm in this space right now where I'm just getting out of a little slump with my body image. I started thinking those unhealthy thoughts of, oh man, I feel so big, I feel so fat, I look really unattractive. And where did those come from? I realized I started spiraling into those thoughts because I started doubting the way that I was eating. And I was like, why am I doubting the way that I'm eating? Am I doing something really unhealthy? No. Okay, maybe here I'm doing something a little unhealthy. Let's dissect that a little bit. So once I go into these little slumps, I just take some time to introspect, take some time to look inside and ask myself, why am I feeling this way? What was the thought? I usually ask myself, what was the thought that spiraled into this? And I realized, oh, it's because I ate pizza the other day. And it's not even unhealthy. It's pizza that I made at home with more nutritious ingredients than you would find outside. I asked myself, okay, why did I think this pizza was bad for me? Oh, it's a little bit more carbs than I expected to eat. Okay, can I break down as to why that's bad? Why are carbs bad? Okay, well, they're gonna make me fat. They're gonna make me gain weight. Okay, is that a scientifically proven concept? Is that a natural law in the universe that eating carbs will make me fat? Because technically, I can just eat one little thumb size of pizza and that has carbs. But will that actually make me get fat? No. Okay, then what can I say to myself moving forward? Food is food. This is pizza. I felt good about the ingredients that I chose in here because I know they'll sit better in my stomach than the ingredients that I'll find outside of my home. And I just keep going and going and going, and I take myself in an upward spiral. You know what? I added basil to it. I grew basil here. I really love my basil plant. My basil plant is so cute. It's provided me so much sustenance. I made pizza dough at home. Like, that's crazy. It becomes an upward and upward spiral. And guess what happens? My energy increases because the higher your energy is, the more likely you're going to act on the next healthy thing for yourself. Because when I start getting into a spiral of negative thoughts where I start thinking, oh no, I've made the wrong decision, it's usually because I started overthinking a choice. And then I just have to tell myself moving forward, well, what's the next best thing I could do? Well, I have a lot of energy right now. Kind of want to go on a walk. Looks really nice outside, so I go on a walk. And I ask myself, ooh, didn't that feel good? Let me just stretch a little bit more before I sit and do more work. I think my body will really like that. And then I just reframe things in a different light versus how my body will look. I'll frame it in a way of how will my body feel? How will my mind feel? You're so much more than your body. You live inside that mind, and don't you want to keep that mind nice and healthy? So what will make your mind feel good? What will give you more confidence? Because I know what gives me confidence is me making healthier choices when it comes to making food at home. And sometimes what makes me feel good is having the occasional cookie or having the occasional ice cream and telling myself, okay, that was nice for my soul. It's time to move forward. And I don't even let the thought of guilty try to creep in. And yes, it does creep in from time to time, but what can I do about it? And yeah, you're still gonna go through a lot of really tough days where your body image is down, your relationship with food seems like it hasn't even progressed. You feel like you've started back at square one, and your confidence takes a hit. When that happens, tell yourself, okay, this is happening, and that's okay. Let me just process these thoughts, because that's normal. I think to be human is to just experience the highs and lows of our emotions, and that's a really good thing. That means you're alive, you're breathing, and you're just going through a rough day. And then again, you ask yourself, well, what can I do right now that'll make my mind feel good? What's going to make my mind feel good? Because when your mind feels good, your body follows. And sometimes your mind just wants to listen to some music. Sometimes your mind just wants to go outside and breathe some fresh air. Sometimes your mind wants to go on a run. Or sometimes your mind just wants to make your favorite meal, no matter how many hours it'll take. Or sometimes your mind just wants to take a breather, because most of us just need some time to breathe and take deep breaths to calm down our nervous system so that we can make better decisions moving forward. So what does your mind want? What's going to make it feel good? Yeah, you can go on a doom scroll, but are you really going to feel good in the end? Not really. Maybe you can listen to something that's uplifting, usually an uplifting podcast, or maybe this coloring video / almost like a podcasty feel video. Start looking to things that'll make your brain feel good. Like a nice little healthy brain wash session where it will wash away all the yucky thoughts from your brain. Go towards more of that. And don't give yourself false expectations that when you do have a better relationship with body image and your food, that everything's going to be really happy and dandy from here. No. You're just better equipped now so that when those days do come where you feel really low, you can bounce back from it. Because now you can recognize what your patterns are, and that comes from time of working on yourself and introspection, seeing what triggers you, seeing what causes you to go through unhealthy, sabotaging behaviors. And isn't that a great thing? I mean, I'm such a huge advocate for journaling. Anytime you have any bad thoughts or any thoughts where you start spiraling, just write it out. It just wants to go somewhere. And I think that's why we start spiraling, because it just stays in our head and it doesn't go anywhere. Gotta put it out into the physical world, I guess, not inside our brains. So just write it on paper, and then once you see it, you realize that looks crazy. Because let's be real, most of us are crazy, and sometimes we gotta just see things from a different point of view. So instead of it lingering around in your brain where you literally cannot see the words that you're thinking, put it out on paper and then see how it looks. And then you're gonna see, my God, what the hell is wrong with me? And it's okay. I think we all have spiraling thoughts. We have crazy thoughts all the time. Again, it's part of being human. Look at this little avocado. You know how much I love eating avocado now? I've avoided it for so many years, ever since getting to the very unhealthy and toxic diet culture where everything must pass your calories test. I love avocados. They're so good for you. These blueberries, I don't know why I made them look like that, but they're blueberries. And that's the thing too. I avoided so much fruit before because I thought they were high in carbs, and that's not going to be good. I don't want to fill it up in my daily calorie allotment because I want to fill those calories up with something else crazy, when in fact these are so good for you, or they're so nourishing. Again, neutralize the way we look at food. Food is food. You like living this way where food just constantly makes you anxious? I don't. Let's just tie this back to what I said in the beginning. Your relationship with your food is tied to your self-worth because subconsciously you tell yourself what you deserve. And you're telling yourself, I only deserve this much because of this. I'm gonna make this one an ube cake. If you find that you're uncovering a lot more deeper things than what's going on in your relationship with your body and food, definitely seek some professional help if you feel like it'll help you move forward a little bit more. And if you struggled with the same thing or you've experienced something similar, I want to hear from you and I want to see what you've done moving forward because it may offer help for other people who are viewing this video as well. And you can print this out as many times as you want and color as many times as you want and let it serve as a reminder that food is just food. It's not good, it's not bad, and that it's something that nourishes you, it fuels you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!